Hey everyone, what is up? And welcome back to another episode of the Lifestyle Lifter Show. Today I'm joined to be joined by Astrid Naranjo. She's a clinical dietitian, she's a master coach at Team BioLane, and she's also one of the highest profile ranked dietitians on social media with a following of over 111,000 on Instagram. Astrid, welcome to the Lifestyle Lifter Show. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure and always excited to chat about everything about nutrition, fitness. And if I can leave any message or anything, I am always excited to do so.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So let's go straight into it, Astrid. So your Instagram bio, your Instagram handle, it is the anti-diet. So like I'm curious why you chose the anti-diet dietitian.
It is a very controversial handle because I get a lot backlash from a lot of people that follow me because I do speak about nutrition, fitness, but I also talk about calorie deficit and weight loss. And usually when people think about anti-diet is they connect the dots with like the old movement on like being completely anti-diet and like all about health at every size and like completely anti no weight loss or anything like that. But the root of why I chose that handle in particular and I identify with it was because when you decide to look at the diets and like the history of obesity and how people have been failing to gain momentum in a weight loss phase or a fat loss phase and actually keep it off for a long time or forever, is that there is no enough education around how to keep it off. Because when you think about everyone's wanting to lose weight, everyone can follow a diet. There's plenty and like numerous of protocols to lose weight, and anything that creates a calorie deficit will result in weight loss. So whether you do a detox diet, whether you follow Weight Watchers, whether you do keto, paleo, like any of those diets are going to work if you are in a calorie deficit. So if somehow whatever you were doing makes it makes a big change when you follow these protocols, because most of the times these diets will either remove a food group or create some restriction in some ways. And because people get sort of like this momentum and excited, oh, I'm just going to do this diet, and they go all in because they're really desperate to lose the weight, they see themselves losing weight and gaining momentum. But because these protocols are meant to be unsustainable for some reason, because they are very restrictive, they are just completely different to what one ones can actually sustain for a long time, then it just creates this fake result. Because yes, you do lose weight, but then once you finish the diet, you gain all the way back. You didn't learn anything. You didn't learn habits. You didn't change your
Right.
behaviors.
Yeah.
You resulted in just restricting and getting foods that were part of your normal diet completely off the diet.
Yeah.
So once you completely finish that phase or that diet, you just want to eat them
Eat them
everything
back
again. And
for
because
sure.
you felt so restricted, you just don't eat them, you binge on them.
Yeah.
And obviously, that creates this binge restrict cycle in a lot of people, not everyone, but this is some of the things that I am against.
Yeah.
So I am against crush dieting and just doing things without knowledge, without education, without changing the actual root cause of what made the person gain weight. Because if you think about it, there are two types of people that trying to lose weight. There's a group of people that can lose weight on a just following a diet, a deficit, and just learning how to do things right. And they will respond fine because the root cause for them was just overeating, because they like food, because they're busy people, they didn't have education around food, and they just put on weight. But there's another category of people that there's not much that we don't talk about many times, and is the emotional eaters, the stress eaters, the ones that struggle with their relationship with food. So any diet that you put them on is going to fail, because the root cause, they thought it was because they were eating the chocolate or because they were eating this or that, but the actual problem wasn't the food, it was something else.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
when we identify that there are two categories of people that are seeking to lose weight, but the root cause is completely different, then you can't treat an emotional eater and a stress eater with just giving them a diet or follow a protocol, because you're not treating the root cause of the problem. You have to treat the behaviors behind why they're responding that way through food, versus someone who doesn't have any education, any knowledge, and you just get them to track their food or follow a protocol. And once they create a calorie deficit, they can adhere to it and they follow the protocol, they lose weight.
So
So,
we'll say, from a coaching perspective, Astrid, let's say someone who's the emotional leader versus someone who they just don't have the education and they were seeking guidance, how would you coach the emotional leader differently than just the person who needs to have a bit more knowledge?
well, when you ask them what their goal is, they both are going to say, I want to lose weight,
Yeah.
right? But when you dig deeper, then you sort of go through their diet history in both these scenarios. And one is going to say, well, I'm very busy. I'm just like always on the go. The weekends are my weakness because I tend to be more social. So you give them more practical strategies to be more accountable and track their data and just be on point. Give them strategies to how to track when you're going out. What are some of the things that you can do when you can maybe just guesstimate some of the things and try to be as accurate as you possibly can. Be prepared, have in advance some idea of where you're going to eat, what are you going to be eating,
Yes. Yeah.
and try to select some of the things. So you can give them very practical strategies that are going to result in getting them on the right track. Sometimes it's just getting them to track their food and actually realize that they were eating way higher and bigger portion sizes that they thought they were. And when they just do that and they start exercising and doing some daily steps and they started looking at changing their lifestyle, things go completely in the right direction.
Sure.
When we think about the same scenario, but with an emotional eater or a stress eater, they will have the same goal. I want to lose 10, 15 pounds. But the issue, again, is not that they likely have tried even harder to lose weight. They have failed over and over again. So they know how to diet, they know how to restrict, they know how to track macros, but the issue is not the knowledge, the issue is the behaviors, and that they're using food as a coping mechanism. So the first thing that I tell them is, once we address the emotional eating or the binge eating, everything else is going to fall into place by default. So we don't really treat the diet or the other things as a major component of their plan. We treat the behaviors and the consistency, the emotional response when they are feeling uncomfortable or anxiety. So we work on some different strategies. What are some of the things that we can do when we feel this urge? why initially or why in the first place are you feeling those urges? What are some of the triggers? So it's
Sure.
more interoceptive awareness, is more being more present, more mindful, more intentional. So this is just more like the mindset and the behavior rather than the food itself. Because
Yes.
they most of the times come with good knowledge base of what nutrition is, what good diet looks like, but they just can't seem to be adherent or consistent enough because the emotional component is just getting in the way.
There's a great book on just everything you're speaking about there, Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. And it's kind of like what you're alluding to, that there's the cue, the routine, the reward. So the cue is you're stressed from work. The routine is you go stop at the shop and you get some cookies and ice cream. The reward is the sugar hit, the short-term dopamine. But the cue is always going to be there. You're probably going to be stressed from work. No, everyone's going to have some element of stress, but if you change the routine, you get a different reward. So it could be, I don't know, swapping that with something like a chewing gum or a 0 calorie drink, for example, that it could be like at least moving them more alignment to where they want to go. I'm curious, Astrid, just based off that then, I know you're working at Team BioLane. I'd love to hear about how's your experience been so far and like what your day-to-day looks like.
So I'm I'm part-time a clinical dietitian in a hospital. So I combine my online coaching with like in-person nutrition, truly clinical nutrition practice. So I've been with Team BioLane for like since 2021, since March 2021. So that would be about 3 years roughly. And I could consider myself one of the oldest and the longest in the team. There was another coach that was in there when I came, but they left the team and they came back. But I've been the one that has been like without quitting,
Sure.
if you can say about it. So I I think it's been a really good experience just because I've always loved to be part of a group of people that are always advocating for our clients, um, and the why we stand for behind evidence base, like truly getting our clients feel like they are people, they're human beings. We treat them with honoring their needs and like trying to get in conversations is a personal and like a relationship uh, and it really means like everyone that is in the team has a very similar human touch approach. So I really like the that aspect of being in the team and that we're always trying to get behind what can we do best to improve our clients'
Experience.
experiences.
Yeah.
So that's been great. And obviously with Lane Norton as our sort of like head boss, um, I guess it's nice just to be with someone that is honest about his approach. He's very transparent about what he does, and he's just very big on all the things that we do as well. So I think it's just like a nice match of what the mindset of the head of the team is and what we're doing, just sort of
Yeah.
to replicate and extend more the same philosophy.
For sure. Yeah, you chose the way. I'd be curious to hear in your on from your perspective, Astrid. So I listened to him recently on Chris Williamson podcast, and a lot of it centered around obviously Ozempic. So this is like the
Mhm.
new thing now that's gaining a lot of popularity. So just for any of our listeners out there, would you mind first of all explaining briefly what Ozempic is? And then I'd love to hear your thoughts on Ozempic itself.
Yeah, so I think it is a drug that has been longer than we think it is. It's just like has gained momentum recently over the years, just because it was somehow improved over the years, the formulation.
Yeah.
In fact, before the like the active life of these semaglutide types from in humans was very short-lived. So it was not really getting an effect on the suppression of the appetite that nowadays we find. And that's because Ozempic or like semaglutide was changing the same the sake of the formulation to, I guess, obtain on a laboratory that has not necessarily that um, just human sequence protein. It is, I think it's coming from an animal or so. So because it's made on the lab and has been worked through the trials and errors and what worked before and what didn't work, they finally found a peptide that could act as a medication to manage type 2 diabetes
Mm.
in a big initial sort of launch, but then it's also gotten attention to manage obesity and like weight management. So basically, as I mentioned, is a peptide, is a protein, um, and it pretty much acts as a agonist receptor of glucagon. So basically, it mimics the GLP-1 hormone in our body. And this obviously involves blood sugar and appetite regulation. So
Yeah.
when we think about that, is going to have three different targets: blood glucose control, appetite regulation, and obviously will have an effect on weight loss. So that's basically the three main things that it does. So when we think about blood sugar, it will help doing that by increasing insulin secretion in response to meals and decreasing the release of glucagon in a way. So it decreases the sugar levels in the blood. It works through appetite regulation as it acts in the slowing of the gastric emptying. So once this happens, obviously you feel more satiated because there's more fullness, and there is an effect on the appetite itself. So there's more satiation. And then with weight loss, because it affects appetite itself and it affects the gastric emptying, most of the times these two things are going to imply an effect on weight loss because there's reduced energy intake. People are not hungry, and because they're not hungry, they eat
Yeah.
less. And there
Mm.
is like less food noise, especially with people that have that struggle with just a lot of cravings, just like feeling like they're always hungry. There's like lack of satiety. So with this medication, it seems like affects the main two things that are the biggest challenges for this particular type of patients. So when I think nowadays the problem is that there are a few different brands, and there are different reasons why not everyone takes them. And this is because they lack the effects of the secondary effects, especially the nauseous, the weakness, the vomiting, the pain in the
Okay.
abdomen. Some
Mm.
people get diarrhea. So there's a lot of different things that people have came across. Even like abdominal pain. Some
Yeah.
people struggle with constipation. So for some people, they can override this as they get used to the first 2 weeks of the treatment, and then they get good at handling those side effects better. But some people are just unable to get uh, or hold on to those, and they have to either switch the medication or stay in a very, very low dose, or they just need to completely remove them and
Sure.
just try a different approach.
So I'm curious then on that note. So we obviously spoke about the importance of like building the right habits and like making something that's sustainable. What if there was someone out there and their goal is weight loss? They've no intuition or education on calorie counting, protein, carbohydrates, fats, fiber, macros, anything like that. And they see something like Ozempic on the market. For that individual, Astrid, would you say that I know there's no absolutes or shoulds or must, but would that person be better off, first of all, at least building some foundation himself or herself before potentially looking into something like this? Or do you think that because it's like that kind of shiny object syndrome and a faster fix, like is there any need to go down the educational route, which might be that bit slower?
I feel that you need to do this well. You have to truly come with some, just come equipped with
Yeah,
some knowledge, have already some foundational knowledge and behavior change, because and change your lifestyle as you go, because if you don't continue as you lose the weight, and if you're not changing those habits and behaviors, that lifestyle around it, you will likely just regain the way back once you
yeah,
are off the
mm,
medication.
yeah,
So you really need to learn about mindful eating, just establish a good regular physical activity routine, healthy meal planning, really looking at your support system, your environment, setting up that accountability, managing emotional eating if it's something that you have struggled before, like knowing your triggers, increasing that interoceptive awareness, knowing what's realistic, knowing what's unrealistic, and track progress, learn how to track macros, learn how to eat vegetables, increase your fiber intake. Like all of these things are likely going to be essential if you
yeah.
want to make these sustainable. And in addition to that,
Fantastic.
because you're more likely to lose weight potentially much faster than if you were not doing or using Ozempic, you want to make sure you're eating adequate amount of protein and that you're doing resistance training, and that becomes an essential component of your diet and your lifestyle before, after, before, during, and after using Ozempic.
Sure. Yeah, fully agreed. It's kind of like the person who wins the lotto, but then they lose all the
Mm-hmm.
money because they haven't built the
Yep.
foundation of like how to actually make money and earn money and keep it. Just on then you mentioned like healthy relationship with food and good habits. We obviously spoke about the emotional eater and you touched kind of on binge eating. So I definitely know something that I was challenged with in the past. So I competed last year and oh my God, like my food focus, it was never as high, I would say, for probably 3 months it took for that to go away. Like after competing. So that was what, July. So it was like July, June, August, kind of started to go in September, inspired away in October. But just on that note, I'd be curious to hear like what are some strategies for someone who has like a high food focus where they're constantly thinking about the next meal. Um, what kind of things you could implement to help build a more positive relationship with food?
It's hard to say with a competitor because they will have a lot of physiological signals for them to regain the weight. So it comes down back to being very mindful and very aware of those risks, especially when you're talking about someone who lost a lot of body fat. They're very, very lean, and the first of all, they shouldn't try to stay as lean and they should
Yeah,
go
for
back to
sure.
maintenance straight
Yeah.
away
Okay.
once they have competed, because that will give them extra fuel that's going to make them feel better. But because it's such a big impact in your physiology, just doing something that is so depleting as a prep and getting so lean, you will have likely for a few months that you will carry that fatigue. You will still
Mm,
carry some of these um, needing to wanting to eat more because your physiology is just wanting you to gain weight back. So
yes.
it's very normal, but in order to prevent a huge weight regain, the main thing that you want to do is try to keep some level of physical activity.
Yeah.
It's not like you competed and you completely drop off. You don't
Mm,
do any more cardio, you don't do any more training. So you want to continue doing some of the same behaviors that you did during your prep, but obviously not as at the to the
not to the
extreme that you
same
have
limit.
to
Yeah.
do 5 sessions a week of resistance training, do that same amount of volume, and like doing so much cardio. Like there's so many things that you just get adjusted. And as you slow and trickle down the training and the volume and the cardio, you maintain some of the things in a relatively good place, like daily steps. So
For
you
sure.
try to maintain your physical activity in some amount that is going to maintain a good energy expenditure, but not to the level extreme that you did when you were prepping.
Not
In
as
addition to
fatiguing.
that,
Yeah.
yeah, in addition to that, obviously, as I mentioned, you want to get back onto maintenance calories, and from there, perhaps do a very progressive, very slow, conservative reverse. So you start adding additional calories week after week, and you start allowing yourself to have every now and then some treats and some things. I would just be cautious with the
Yes.
palatability of the food
Mm.
as you go from day after the show all the way until 2 or 3 months after. So
For sure.
you want to sort of stay on the lower, highly palatable foods and somehow just get some of the foods kind of back into being nice and tasty and enjoy food, but be very mindful about portion
Yes.
sizes. And like it's not a free for all. Don't plan a cruise straight after your show or a holiday because that is just a recipe for disaster potentially
Yeah.
if you're someone who is very sensitive. I personally don't know yet how's that going to feel because I am prepping now and I'm
You're,
12 weeks out for my
yeah.
first bodybuilding show. So I'm not sure how that's going to come out. I am going to be very responsible
Yeah.
and document my post-show challenges and my journey. But I have done a very good prep. I took 36-week long prep
Yeah.
just
Wow.
because I wanted to have the
9 months.
flexibility
Mm.
but it has a reason. I wanted to have the flexibility. Like if I wanted to have a treat,
Sure.
heck yeah, I have time.
Yeah.
I can allow myself to do that. So it hasn't feel restricted. It hasn't feel like like foods are off limits, and it just feels like it was a just like a nice timing for me to just to allow myself to do some things. I went on a cruise and I gave myself permission to eat certain things, and I still lost weight and I still was able to do everything. So it is possible when
It
you
gives you
have
more
more
runway.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it gives you more flexibility, and it's going to depend obviously on the person's background, their relationship with food and the dieting history and any sort of eating disorder history. And because I took a good amount of time to feel like I was ready to diet to this level of leanness, I didn't want to take a very short window and just like smash me on a diet
Yeah.
phase and like lose weight too fast. And I think the nice thing about doing a very slow dieting approach for your prep is that you also don't need to lose as much weight per week. And because the rate of loss is much slower,
You preserve more
you
muscle.
you preserve more muscle, you
Yes,
train
yeah,
better, you
for
can
sure.
still get a good volume in your training sessions. You can, like, there's a lot that you can gain from just taking your time. It
Yeah,
can be exhausting because obviously it's a very long deficit for a long time, but it's not as aggressive. So it has its
sure.
pros and cons.
Yeah,
I feel like for a beginner or like a uh, first timer is a good timing, because remember that it's not just about dieting. It's about learning how to even pose. You have never done that before. And that shit is hard. Uh,
yeah.
Walking on heels, like I had never walked on heels before, and like that shit was even harder. Like it was so many things that, like, if I would have taken 12 weeks, I wouldn't feel confident enough to
Stepping
do
up
a
and
routine.
yeah,
Yeah, like I I wouldn't even feel like I haven't gotten the time to attain that personality that wants to show up on stage. So every time, every week that I've been doing the work, I've just realized, okay, I have to do this to do better and have to move this way and I have to think differently. It's just so many things that you start learning about yourself, and just feeling like you can actually do it is another thing.
for
Because
sure.
when I started, I had so many questions in my head, like, how can I even imagine myself on a stage and doing this posing and doing that if I've never done it before? Like, I couldn't even see myself doing it. And now, 25 weeks later, in the middle, almost 12 weeks out, I can see myself doing that, and I
Yeah,
feel more feminine. I feel like I am getting the arm flow, I'm nailing a little bit more the transitions. So those areas of the prep are as important as the diet itself.
yes,
So it's
yeah,
not just about dieting, it's about, are you becoming that person that you want to show on stage? And are you confident? Are you getting the confidence? Are you gaining um, that personality that you didn't have before? So
sure.
there's a lot of things. So
Yeah,
I feel like once you obviously have competed a few times, you don't need that long, because
yeah,
you know what how to pose. You just need to refine it. You already have the experience of what a peak week looks like, how your body responds. You know exactly how much or how hard a diet could be, and if you can go a little bit more aggressive, then you can do that because you have already mastered all the things that you already had. You didn't
for
have it
sure.
at the beginning.
Yeah,
So that's why
yeah.
I
20,
took that
30,
route.
36 weeks. Yeah. You touched on a great point there. On top of giving yourself more runway, obviously you don't need to go through like unsustainable methods. And also what you mentioned, it's funny. I was listening to Dr. Mike also on Chris Williamson podcast, and he was saying the exact same thing, that obviously the further you are into your calorie deficit, the more you should quote unquote maybe minimize some of the more highly palatable foods simply because it's like taste and dessert, and you're going to be more susceptible to, wanting to have more and more and more. And the further you are from the reverse dieting to maybe a lean gaining phase, that's when you start incorporating more of those. Just to kind of wrap things up, Astrid, I've two final questions for you. So you mentioned there that you first of all made sure that you were mentally ready to do something like this. So just for the average everyday individual, most listeners here, they're probably not looking to compete in stage, but they do want to get a bit fitter, get a bit leaner, and look a bit better. What are like some how can someone know if they're, would say, emotionally ready to actually go into, we'll say, a 3 to 6 month fat loss phase? What are some things that you would like? What are some boxes that need to be ticked?
To be successful, I think knowing that you want to get there and that you're willing to put in the work, that you have set a realistic goal that is achievable and is doable. I think something that helps a lot is to work with a coach that can help you and show you the way and can give you a good, I guess, is like how do you say that? you can forecast with the amount of weight loss that you are going to target, when and how long would it take you to get there if
Yeah.
everything was like how it's supposed to go theoretically. Like if we were on this deficit and this at this rate, this is the amount of time that will take you to get to the goal that you want to achieve. Are you willing to put in the work? Yes, no. Is it realistic? Yes, no. What are some of the things that need to happen? We need to be in a calorie deficit. How much is that deficit? How can this deficit be set up? Because it's not necessarily all coming from the diet itself. It can be adjusted from the lifestyle perspective, physical activity, resistance training, cardio, energy expenditure itself, and all of these things. And also like knowing that you don't have to be ready by then. So like it's okay to fuck up. It's okay to have some diet breaks. It's okay to just go at a pace that you can give yourself some grace if you feel like that is feeling harder, and give yourself some compassion and some grace when you have hard days. So I guess to your question as well is mastering some of the key foundations of having a good relationship with food, knowing that you kind of you can find a way to track your macros that may be more particular to you, that works for you, or to track your daily intake. I particularly feel like, to me, if I can just eat my protein and hit my calories, to me, carbohydrates and fats don't really matter.
Same
So that
exactly.
gives me a
Yeah.
much more flexibility if I wanted to eat this or that. Um, and like I don't have to be necessarily exact or precise. I like working with a range. So between 1500 and 1600, like I'm going to be something in between. At the end of the day, it never is completely exact.
Sure.
So you will still want to just try to be as compliant as you can, but don't stress to be completely perfect. And
100%.
mindset is going to be huge.
Yeah. And just on that, we'll ask you the final question then, Astrid, which is a tradition for all the show. First of all, for anyone who wants to learn a bit more about you, about your content, Astrid, where is the best place to send people?
To my Instagram is a really great place where I put a lot of content. Also, my YouTube channel. And the other place that you can find me is I have written two books, and these two books are available in my page, in my bio. They are exactly talking about that trifecta of how you need to master the psychology and the mindset if you want sustainable results
Yeah.
over time. It's not just about the
Okay.
training and the calories and the diet, but how it plays a big role to get to that goal of maintaining weight forever.
Sure.
Um, and I also have a few more tools that I have in my website that can be very helpful for those that want to learn how to meal plan without stressing about tracking every single macro, and learn more about the different food groups. So there's quite a few things that can be done, and you can find those things in my website.
Perfect. Okay. And just for reference, your IG handle, it's anti-diet underscore dietitian. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, anti-diet underscore dietitian. Awesome. Okay, perfect. I'll post the links in the show notes also. And then just finally, Astrid, because this is the Lifestyle Lifters show, I'm curious in your end, what would you define as a successful lifestyle? What's your definition of living what's your definition of living a successful lifestyle?
Good question. A successful lifestyle is going to come truly having a balance between that, what you do for your day-to-day life, and how that aligns with your values and goals, and maintains you healthy.
Yeah.
So this looks like this looks different for the different people, but like if you're able to master certain habits that are like non-negotiables,
Yeah,
that are going to feed in good health, so such as eating healthy foods, having that sort of like 80-20 rule where you also allow yourself to have some soul foods and some treats. You do your daily steps, you do resistance training, you manage your stress, and you're able to prioritize your sleep. Like if you do those things, you could say that you have a relatively healthy lifestyle, and then everything else that surrounds a healthy lifestyle is going to be the people that you live with, or you communicate with, or you surround with, the people that you follow, the people that
yeah,
follows you, like your environment and like your social aspect of as well. So I
yeah.
think all of those things are going to be part of that healthy lifestyle too.
Amazing. Unreal. Unreal. Astrid Naranjo, absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on. This episode has been absolutely brilliant. I really appreciate it.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will be following your journey 12 weeks out. So looking forward to seeing how the coming months
Oh,
progress.
wish me luck.
Absolutely. Astrid Naranjo, thanks again. Thank you very much for coming on. And just finally, for everyone, if you did enjoy this episode, please make sure you subscribe, whether it's on Apple or on Spotify, so you do not miss out on our weekly Wednesday uploads. Until next week, thank you very much for listening to the Lifestyle Lifter Show.